Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Visual Storytelling with Olschi. I'm Olschi and on this channel we'll talk about how to draw manga, comics and just anything art related really. In this episode we want to talk about how to draw movement. Showing how something moves on a still 2D surface is, well, not easy. In this video we'll talk about how we can create the illusion of movement on paper, traditional or digital. Luckily, comic and manga artists in the past have developed great techniques which not only show how someone or something moves, but also make your art look stunning in the process. The most general visual effect of movement are speedlines. Speedlines show how quickly someone or something is moving. For example, if I move my hand in front of the camera like this, you can see it clearly, nothing gets blurry. So I would draw it without any speed lines. If I move the hand really quickly, you can still see it's a hand, but the image becomes blurry. This is where you would use speed lines to show the movement. So as you can see, not all movement equals speed lines. Sometimes you have to leave the interpretation of movement up to the reader. It can be tempting to use speed lines more often for any kind of movement because they look cool. But it's really important to distinguish when it's best to use them and when not, because it all depends on the kind of movement you want to depict. Clear communication is part of good storytelling, and adding speed lines where they are not necessary can make the movement look confusing, distracting, or unnatural. So always have in mind how certain movements work. Sometimes it can even be helpful to try out the movement yourself. Looks stupid, but it helps you understand the motion. So let's talk about how to draw speed lines. The key to good speed lines is a combination of looseness and precision. When you sketch the panel, try to keep your lines as loose as possible. Use the full range of your arm to draw the lines. You can be as rough as you want to be. At this stage, what matters most is to capture the movement. This will give you a guideline of where the speed lines will make sense. This is almost like gesture drawing. You know, this quick sketching of a pose from a photo reference or even from a live drawing reference. Through quick lines, you create more dynamic movement. The lines show where the movement starts and where it ends. The lines are more dense at the latest point in time of the movement and get less at the start of the movement. I usually like to draw lines from the point where the movement ends to where the movement started. But it really doesn't matter how you draw your line as long as it looks dynamic in the process. So this is the loose part of drawing speed lines. Before you start line work where you have to be precise, you might have to clean up a little bit. But also, you don't have to be too clean. Now that the loose part is over, it's time to be precise. This is where your inking skills will be tested. I can give you some tips that help me improve my speed lines, but most of it is just practice. So don't feel discouraged if you don't get the perfect results straight away. With the sketch, I usually already make a rough outline of what lines will be just normal outlines and what lines will become blurry or like what lines I will draw as speed lines. So this arm here is moving really fast. To show this, I draw a mix of long and short speed lines. Lots of the speed lines I keep just slightly longer than the normal outline would be. This way you can still see the shape of the arm, which has a really nice effect in my opinion. The longer the lines are, the less clear the shape. And the quicker the movement. The more distortion there is, the quicker the movement basically. In some fighting scenes, all you see are speed lines. This way we know the movement depicted is barely visible to the reader's eye. When drawing the speed lines, it's really important to keep the lines more or less parallel. Of course, they can merge at one point and they follow some curves. And they don't have to be perfect, obviously, but they should all follow the same basic movement. If the lines are too much off and some of them are following into a different direction, it can just look messy. and the movement loses its momentum. It takes practice and patience to draw those lines. You can try to draw them on a separate layer so you can correct things more easily. And in many cases you can use rulers to help yourself. Most of the rulers you can use are among the special rules: parallel lines, parallel curve, focus lines, and so on. In some cases you cannot really use any rulers and just have to persevere, I guess. The most organic results happen when you manage to draw those lines clearly without using a ruler. And the purposeful messiness can actually add energy to your drawing. So it's definitely something to strive towards. But this is also not something you have to go for straight away. It's okay to use some tools to help you in the beginning. Line variation is also something that helps the drawing to look more dynamic. The closer the lines are to the camera, the thicker they are. Also try to draw different lengths, different thickness and distance of the lines. This is something you can also play around with at the sketch area. Just try to make some lines thicker and add some more lines here and there and just see what kind of effect it has. To add a nice effect to your movement, you can also draw those particles in certain areas. This can be dust, dirt, or anything really. It doesn't really matter that much what it is exactly, but it adds a nice touch. It just shows that the movement affects its surrounding environment. Take things like patterns and screen tones into the consideration, because those are affected by the movement as well. So if your character is wearing black clothes, instead of drawing a solid black, you might have to draw a ton of lines. You can actually fill in some areas here and there, but depending on how quickly the character moves, you will have to draw speed lines instead. Even the screen tones can and should follow some of the movement. You don't have to be super detailed, but make sure some of the edges follow the speed lines. You can also add some white lines on top, or erase some of the lines to create a more natural motion. Of course, if you draw a line quicker, it will look more dynamic. It's easier then to thin it out towards the end, which is really important. Don't just stop in the middle of the movement. But it's also another thing that you can just practice with time. Maybe before you start, you just do some parallel speed lines on a separate layer, on a separate file, just to do a little warm-up basically. Some days you will find it meditative to draw speed lines. Other days it will simply feel tedious. At least for me, it's a love-hate relationship. I love drawing speed lines, but sometimes I hate how long it takes. In Bad Dog and Good Boy, I had to draw speed lines a lot. Obviously, dogs with superpowers move really fast, so speed lines are a perfect way of showing it. It was a good practice and now I feel a lot more comfortable drawing them. Same goes for you. Just keep practicing and I promise you will get better with each drawing. Drawing speed lines traditionally is a little bit more tricky because you can just draw over things on a separate layer. And correcting lines is obviously not really possible in most cases. But still, with practice, obviously you can get pretty good at it. And obviously you can also just use rulers to help yourself. And for any curved lines, you can use French curves. If you have to draw over something, you might try some masking tape. And here too, maybe before you even start drawing speed lines, you can just practice beforehand on a separate piece of paper, just to warm yourself up. How you see speed lines does not only depend on what kind of movement you want to show. It also depends on the camera and what viewpoint the reader is supposed to take. If the viewer is looking at something flying past them, the speed lines follow that one object. But if the reader is moving along with the object, so to say, then there are no speed lines behind the character, but instead the background becomes blurry. This is what Scott McCloud calls subjective motion. It's when the reader is basically in the middle of the action, following the characters. sometimes seeing things from their point of view even. This is often emphasized with focus lines. It represents the zoom in of a camera. Well, sometimes. Sometimes it can just symbolize surprise or other things. Focus lines are very versatile. And subjective movement is also shown through a streaky background. Here, for example, I drew the shelf in the background with speedlines to show how quickly Ilso is moving while moving the camera along with her. The good news is that those lines are usually easier to draw. They are usually just straight lines, either following a vanishing points like focus lines or being completely parallel and straight to each other. And the effect is great. You can create a lot of drama with this in your manga. As I said before, some movement is drawn without any speedlines. That's usually when someone or something is moving slow enough, maybe even in slow motion. To show dynamic movement without speedlines can be quite hard. You have to understand how the body, the hair, the clothes move. You have to know where maybe distort some features or to exaggerate them to make the pose more dynamic. Knowing also how to add surrounding elements into the panel. This is where true mastery lies. I would teach you how to draw dynamically in general, but I'm nowhere near mastering it myself. Once I feel like I have a hold of it, a better understanding of it, I will make a video about it. So, see you in 100 years? Anyways, here are two examples. A bad one and a better one. Here I have a character running. Adding speedlines here would make him look like he's the Flash, which doesn't make any sense, he's not moving at such a high speed. But something about the pose makes it look kinda stiff. And here's another pose of a character running. I don't have any speedlines here either, but it does look more dynamic, more natural and just quicker. The difference mainly lies in how I drew the pose and just in basic understanding of anatomy and how certain movement works. And of course, if you want to learn how to depict movement better, you do need to understand anatomy better. And this is a whole different topic of its own. So of course, learning how anatomy works will be unavoidable if you want to become better at drawing movement. Oh, and you can also show movement through a sequence of images. You can draw the same character multiple times in a panel. Here's an example from Air Gear. This is usually used to show a whole choreography, so to say, or to show a pattern of action. It's quite an interesting effect and can be used for some great visual storytelling. So I hope this video was helpful, and I hope you do feel encouraged to draw some speedlines yourself. Start with something more simple and then challenge yourself to more complex poses. What is your usual approach to depicting motion? I personally just love the creative ways manga and comic artists show movement. They create whole fighting scenes with just some lines. It's insane if you think about it. So I guess we should thank all the experienced artists out there who created all these techniques to show movement. And that's it for this video. If you liked it, I would really appreciate it if you pressed the like button below. Also, if you don't want to miss out any of my future videos, then please subscribe to this channel and press the notification bell. And you can also follow me on my other social media. All the links will be in the description box. My manga Bad Dog and Good Boy will be coming out in March. And also you can read my self-published manga Another Me online for free. I finally started updating the chapters in English, so more pages will be coming in the next few weeks on tapas and webtoons. And yeah, in my shop you can purchase the printed copy in German if you like. Before I finish the video, a special thank you goes out to everybody who donated on my Ko-fi page. You really helped me make this channel run, and I really appreciate your help. Thank you very much. And of course, thanks to everyone who watched this video. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll hope to see you in the next video. Until then, bye!